Good evening to you all, but let me just say it again. My name's Jeanette Arnold. I am the London Assembly member for London North East. That covers the boroughs of Hackney, Islington and Waltham Forest. And I'm here with my colleague...
Unmesh Desai. I'm the Assembly member for City and East London.
Yeah.
It joins Jeanette's constituency, and I was part of the delegation that went to Ankara from 5th to the 8th of December.
And so we cover East London. And so we said during a recent visit, which I'll just mention, that what we would do on our return would be we would do our best to facilitate meetings like this and anything that we can do to bring together the voice of local and city government representatives, starting firstly in London, because that's our purchase, because we were aware that although we as local and city representatives were picking up the concerns of our constituents because of their concerns of their families, that we hadn't done anything. We hadn't spoken out in any structured way as a group. And so whilst we were away, we thought we should explore that, how we can bring together local and city government representatives, starting with London, and if then there is some movement, if there is, you know, appetite for it, then we can always invite others to join. So let's welcome the number of organisations in the room, and you've got in front of you a paper put together by Estella, and Estella has put together this paper with Kurdish Mayors and Councillors campaign and her own organisation, Peace in Kurdistan, and of course the call by the Centre for Kurdish Progress is for peace and justice. We've invited a number of people here tonight, and we welcome Julie Ward, MEP from North West England, and she has attended trials of Kurdish mayors. We've got Margaret Owen sitting here to my right, human rights lawyer, and again Margaret has attended many trials of Kurdish politicians. Umesh and I was on the Ankara visit. We met so many members who were there campaigning. We sadly were denied access, like everybody else. I think the only member of our delegation who got in was Councillor Ali Gould, and he sends his apologies for tonight because he's a councillor in the London Borough of Haringey, and he would like a sort of grouping of local and city government representatives, but they've got their full meeting tonight, and then they are then prorogued because of the local council elections. So it was a very important meeting for him to attend. Similarly, Councillor Afar Ofan from the London Borough of Enfield, she sends her apologies. Similarly, it's just a bad week, and we just have to live with this, you know. We get clashes because priorities, and you have to make decisions accordingly. And then let me welcome John Hunt, NUJ freelance journalist, and he attended the recent trial of the Diyarbakir co-mayor Bultan Kishanak, and so we'll hear about that. I just wanted, whilst we were away in Ankara, we pulled together some photos, and I just thought that I would flag them up for you, and just to say, you know, I just wanted to be able to look on the faces of these two marvellous people that we were denied access, so, you know, to somehow send a spirit to will them, to say that we are in awe of your courage, but we were denied. The international delegation was made up of about 30 delegates from all over Europe. And we were there from the 5th to the 8th, and even though it was clear to us they weren't going to let us in, we said we would not be moved, and we would make the noise and the presence, and indeed we would join other people who were there. We also used the time to receive briefings and updates from the women's groups, from the trade unions, from local government representatives, from the lawyers representing the co-mayors, and we joined with them, and we were, if you like, locked out. Our main trade union there with us was, funnily enough, half of us belonged to the General Municipal and Boilermaker workers, and we've got a commitment of action from them. I mean, we don't hear it here because we're denied access to the news, so it was great for us to be able to see the examples of all the campaigns that have been running. And, you know, they've had such bravery on the streets. The public sector workers went out, fear and arrest, and they were arrested and they were released, but they still went back onto the streets. Lawyers, teachers, you know, name it, women out there on the streets, and the young people. And it was good to capture the images that they had captured from their events, and for us to then have the opportunity to show others that there is a fight back there. You know, citizens aren't being passive. When I meet some of my constituents, they say, "Oh, Jeanette, it's no use, nothing can be done about him." And when I've shown them these pictures, they've said even they don't know, because they don't see the pictures. And I think that's so much in need. That's why, you know, I'm going to give a copy of this slideshow to as many councillors as I can. Not on stick, but maybe just in a little folder, so that they can say, yes, there is resistance there. And also just, you know, think of just, maybe we could do a letter writing campaign with the organisation who's working very well there, Amnesty International. When we met them, one of these gentlemen had just been released from being imprisoned, and he was so stoic. He said, "Oh, you know, next week again, you know," and we should be talking about this. We should be saying there is resistance there, and we should be supporting that. As I said, we thought we were going to go to be witnessing the trials in the Ankara Regional Court. When we got there, we were told that it had been moved because of security. We, representatives from across Europe, were now a security risk. And they moved the trial. It wasn't just for us, but generally they had moved the trial to the Sincan High Security Prison Complex. The location is like without public access. You can see the barbed wires, and the level of heavily armed police and constant surveillance. And a friend, a colleague of ours was there who lived through the horror of Northern Ireland, and he was comparing it with how they had suffered there, and we were all in because we kept saying, this is Turkey, this is Turkey. I couldn't get over it because I had a friend who was in the south holidaying, and I was thinking, how can I be here? And I know, because we were talking earlier, I know it happens, but you still have got to get over that dissonance, you know, and I think that dissonance is at play, and we've got to challenge our own dissonance and the you know, that question of others. I mean, after the 2 days, we were just dejected. We were freezing, that's all I have to say. It is blowing cold. And once you get there on the coach, you don't sort of like get back, and there's no drinking. And did you find a loo? Well, the men always find loos. But, and did you, Barbara, did you find, you don't have to tell me.
The Christmas was lovely.
Yes, it was very, very difficult. And of course, you know, you didn't want it. This wasn't a place you went off on your own, you know, because this, the police were serious. They were threatening, and they meant they were being serious about it. So I mean, the numbers were huge. These were also, you know, people who had experienced the horrors that's going on in their country, who'd come out, and the number of women was marvellous. Absolutely marvellous. Again, we get the sense that women are passive and are not out there, and the young women were so thirsty and, you know, up there, and we just have to keep our support going for them. We made a declaration, and everybody took the declaration away and committed to sharing it, and we can say that we were there and we saw we were invited. They said that we could, the judges said we could go in, but the police said no, we couldn't go in. And certainly, as I say, Ali Gul went in because he had his Turkish passport. And so he walked in with his passport, and we just saw, you know, members of the government walking in, but no one who was there belonging to the HDP could go in. And it isn't justice when it's been done behind closed doors. So we left knowing that the threat to democracy is real, and I don't, you know, you might think, because many of you have been campaigning, I don't mean to be twee about all this. It isn't until sometimes you go and see it for yourself that you can then witness and testify in the way that we can now. You know, because the baton wasn't that far away. There was one point where you were nearly run over. The water cannon just kept coming. It was like, you know, what are you doing here? It was quite scary at times. And so we've come back, and we've got the evidence of the flagrant and widespread abuse of human rights and the persecution, and the stories that we heard. We met 2 people, I never remember the days, it's so horrible, isn't it? 270 days, the hunger strikers who we had to mask up because, of course, they're so vulnerable and so weak. We couldn't introduce any germs into the environment because that could have, you know, their immune system is kaput, and they're down to bones. I mean, you only see these sort of images, you know, coming out of the worst of horrors anywhere elsewhere. So we did see that persecution, and that particular couple, all they had done was to go out on a protest, and then had been arrested, and they then decided they couldn't bear living in their country anymore, so they embarked on a hunger strike, and I think that was quite a chilling experience for us all. So we then, as I said at the start, we who were there, we've made a compact with each other that we want to be, whatever support we can give, we will give. You have to ask us, tell us. I am always within the community that I serve, and given that it's Hackney, Islington and Waltham Forest, that's a huge sort of diaspora of Turkish and Kurdish, and I've been representing them now for about 30 years in one way or the other, because I was on Islington Council and similarly Umesh. So basically we're not going anywhere, we're here, and whatever support we can give, we're committed to giving it. So thank you for that. My colleague's got to go because East London is so busy. You've got another evening's event.
I do, the Chair.
Yes.
Can I just add a few words to what you already said?
Yeah.
It was a very inspiring trip and a very moving trip. I hadn't been to Turkey since 1991, to Istanbul, and that was as a tourist. Basically, we were asked, in the words of one of the co-chairs of the HDP, to go and tell the world what is going on in Turkey. That was a simple message, and that is what we're doing today. I'll try not to repeat what Janet has said, but I wish we could report back on the reason why we went on the trip, which was to observe the political, I call it short trials, of the two co-chair of the HDP. But as I said, we weren't allowed into the prison, into the court, the prison court. As I understand it, the trial was moved from the centre of Ankara to Sirkut prison, which is a high security prison, some 50 odd miles outside the centre of Ankara. Very hard to get to. And we were relatively privileged, from what I understand. Relatives of prisoners coming from outside Ankara, mainly from the southeast of Turkey, are often stopped on the outskirts of Ankara, not allowed in. When we got there, again, as I understand, the judge said that we could go in, but after intervention by state authorities, as Janet said, we were deemed a threat to the security of the court. So there were MEPs from all over Europe, a Greek MP, House of Lords, myself, Janet, journalists, GMB representatives. Some of them even had clearance from the Turkish embassy, but that really didn't mean nothing. And I've been to Northern Ireland at the height of the Troubles in the late 70s and early 80s, and I was proud to stand on miners' picket lines in the early 80s. Grunwigs, Wapping. And I don't hesitate, I don't use the word police state lightly, but what we saw in Turkey was something resembling a police state. So the trial, the second day, again, we knew we wouldn't be allowed in, but we were determined to make a point of going, and so we still went there. The first day, the water cannons that came out, the big sort of trauma tanks that you saw, and the riot police with shields, they surrounded us with shields. I mean, we were just, there were 30 of us, and they were doing that to us, who are international observers. And then can you imagine how they treat other people? I held up a GMB banner with my colleague Dennis from Camden GMB. We just want to take a picture to put on social media. And this guy came over, and obviously speaking in Turkish, but we got the message, take it down straight away. Any gathering of more than 2 or 3, they would call that a rally. No megaphones allowed. They surrounded us with riot shields, and they started banging on the riot shields with their truncheons to attempt to intimidate us. So I could go on and on. I feel really sorry, as I said, for the relatives of the prisoners. And again, as I understand it, supporters of the ruling AKP party were allowed into the court, so they could fill up the courtrooms at the expense of people who had every right to be there because their relatives were inside. The GMB panel, what was outside the prison? Then the rest of the 2 days, I think, we went around, we saw the Turkish equivalent of Liberty. I used to be the executive committee of Liberty in the early 80s, in the early 90s with now Mayor Sadiq Khan. So we had some links, but this has been the worst in Turkey since they were set up. They were set up some 35 years ago. And that was the slide with the man with the beard, 3 of them. We met the Turkish SENSK, the Turkish equivalent of GMB, Unison Public Sector Workers, and we heard some really heartbreaking stories. What Erdogan has done is he's used the so-called coup. I mean, I've got to say this, I said to the Deputy High Commissioner, the British Deputy High Commissioner, if the Turkish army wants to organize a coup, they know how to organize it, and they're quite good at organizing coups, they're not amateurs. So the so-called coup, and if Ali, my colleague Ali, Councillor for Haringey was here, I think he would use much more stronger language, because he made his views very clear to the Deputy High Commissioner, who said they were doing everything they could to bring, to express their displeasure with what was going on in Turkey to Erdogan. But thousands of public sector workers have lost their jobs, accused of being Gulenists, whatever. It's been a purge of socialists, of trade unionists, and again, they don't get any state benefits, as has been said, so the trade unions have set up funds to help these people, especially women workers. We met the women's secretary, very inspiring person. Yeah. We saw the Deputy High Commissioner and the political officer of the British Embassy, who said they were very sympathetic, they knew what was going on, they had made protests to Erdogan. They were not in fear of sanctions on Turkey, because they thought that that would actually, be counterproductive. They said, I wouldn't say they were apologists, but because that's too strong a term, but they were, I was very disappointed. They said that, well, they sort of tried to defend, or not defend, but they were hesitant about being too critical of Erdogan, because what they said was that there was this element of fear within the Turkish establishment because of the coup. And so any people in Turkey would drop, people would pull ranks together. Because what did we do? We went, and so on the last day, a person who's been on hunger strike, and his wife lost her job for going to see him when he was hunger striking outside the parliament in Ankara. A professor friend of his came to see him, just offered moral support, purely personal friendship level. He lost his job simply because for going to see his friend. So it was really moving, inspiring, the dignity of people, the courage. We heard some heartbreaking tales, the sexualization of violence against women, prisoners, the attack on minorities, the attack on trade unions, the attack on all democratic and progressive forces. Basically, as I understand it, I've been doing some reading up on Turkey. I bought 3 books from what was to the ticket early, the Saturday before we went. I left them here, I thought I wouldn't be allowed into the country in case they searched me at the airport. I don't think I'll be welcome back in Turkey. And I'm certainly not going back as a tourist, because that's a little bit I can do to show solidarity with what's going on in Turkey. But he's trying to fashion the whole country in his particular sort of brand of Islamism. In fact, a friend of mine from East London, from Prime Minister's Labour Party, said to me that many people in many conservative, with a small c, people used to look to Saudi Arabia, now look to Erdogan, because they can see a state that they want fashion in their own image, and that is, that's the reality of Erdogan's Turkey. Again, stuff we heard, what he said in the past about the Kurds, about women to be at home and raise more Turkish children, the whole Ottoman Empire thing, the real Turkey, the nationalism. So it is, the country is in a very bad state. So what can we do? This is a small meeting, but it's an act of solidarity, which we'll publish through social media. I'm still a councillor. I'm stepping out for 20 years in Newham Council. I missed my last council meeting, which is tonight, because I just thought this was more important. I couldn't live with myself from being here. We can do our own small bit by forming a councillors, a local government network. There's already a parliamentary network. I think there was a Ibrahim All-Party parliamentary group on Turkey that has been set up. Excellent. So I'm sorry, my MP Stephen Timms, I'm his election agent, so I've already spoken to him. All these 10 MPs, I'll make sure I'm part of that. I hope we can write to councillors up and down the country, through the press, through the Labour Party, through the trade union movement. We can add our own voice to the international voice of protest against what our brave brothers and sisters are undergoing in Turkey. And it's cross-party, of course, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We can't be partisan about it. All welcome support. As I said, Paul Maskey is a Sinn Féin MP. Many conservative MPs, are concerned about what's going on. We were hoping that our colleague Andrew Boff could have been here, but I know that Janet's been liaising with him. We'll certainly work at the Learner Assembly, and we'll do everything we can to highlight what's going on in Turkey, because the simple message was, go and tell the world what's going on. And finally, Chair, I must say the personal side of things. In spite of being under so much pressure, the guy was interpreting for us. It was only last night or dinner we found out that he too had been arrested. Yes. Right? And what was his crime? Because he acts as the interpreter. His official title, the HTP, is to liaise with the EU. So they asked him, well, what does this liaise with the EU mean? Well, it means arranging delegations. It means people speak to people like Julie Watt and other people. And he was facing serious charges. And you'd never guessed it. They were so friendly, so sympathetic, really looked after us at a human level. And it looks like almost every second person we met had either been arrested or facing charges. And so, yeah, I think to call it a police state is not overstating the case. So thank you, Chair, and I will be leaving soon because I've got an engagement of Professor.
Thank you so much. Let me call on Julie. We know that you've been doing so much work. Please share with us your thoughts.
Okay. Maybe what I'll do first of all is just talk a little bit about my involvement. I've been involved in the issue really since I met Ronnie and John, which would be, is it 18 months ago? Or is it longer? I don't know, it feels like all my life now, but anyway. Because I'm a MEP for the North West of England and my office is in Manchester and there is a diaspora, I mean, I have many people from the Kurdish community in my constituency. And so it was really by meeting Ronnie that I began to engage with the issue. Around about the same time that we met for the first time, which would have been in September 2016, I think, I'd also been invited to participate in a study visit with the European grassroots anti-racist movement to Diyarbakir. So, and I felt very, very motivated to go on that visit because I'd met you and I had some information, but I didn't know very much. Just a little bit about the European Grassroots Anti-Racist Movement. It is a civil society organisation that tries to raise awareness of genocide and genocide denial, tries to fight racism at a European, in fact a global level. In fact, I'd been with this organisation on missions to Rwanda, to sites of Romani genocide in the Czech Republic. I've spoken in the French Senate on behalf of Rwandan people. So I have and they organise some really interesting programs, particularly targeted at involving young people, but they're very, very good political lobbyists. The man who is the chair of the organisation, he used to work in the French Parliament, so he's very good at working at a political level. And the organisation has a lot of young people involved in it, so they're very good at also working at a grassroots level with young people. Anyway, the visit that I went on with them was the very beginning of October 2016 and was not without incident because on my way to Diyarbakir I was detained at Ataturk Airport and interrogated, and I had my iPad, my phone taken away from me simply because of my destination, not for any other reason, simply because I was taking a plane to Diyarbakir. Okay, I didn't tell them who I was, and I was. What happened is that the Turkish Airlines help desk, who was supposed to be helping me, basically told the police to come and arrest me because of my destination. So I just wanted to share that with you because that shows you, if you like, the state that the country is in. When I was just travelling, and for this to simply be a change of planes, and to be then to be subject to really what was terrible harassment. I was very, very afraid, I have to say. Anyway, I was able to make my visit, and it was a 5-day study visit, and we met then the 2 co-mayors of Diyarbakir, and many of the things that have already been said, I witnessed. We went to Diyarbakir, we went to Nusaybin. So I went to Nusaybin, which is a city on the border, which has been completely devastated and bombed. I met mothers who hadn't found the bodies of their children, basically, or they'd been given bits of bodies. A horrendous situation. I was reminded, actually, I'm on the delegation for relations with Bosnia-Herzegovina and Kosovo, and I've been in Srebrenica, and the only thing I could relate this situation to was of being in the same room with the mothers of Srebrenica.
It's really inspiring. Margaret, you know so many people.
And I think I should be at the end.
Oh, you should be at the end, definitely. I'm happy for you to be at the end. Can I just call Ibrahim? Ibrahim, can you just update us on the all-party group? I mean, firstly, can we congratulate you on the work that you've been doing? I just don't know how you do it, but I've known you so long that I know that you don't sleep. And so a wonderful breakthrough. We had quite a short journey together in Parliament where you were running around just sealing the deal. So tell us about the all-party group that is now up and running.
There are several all-party groups on Turkey and Kurdistan. There's one called APBG Kurdistan, which does a lot of work on Kurdistan region of Iraq. And there's an APBG on Turkey, which doesn't do nothing. They're inactive. So we thought of, we've been planning to set up an APPG, which would bring those MPs who are like-minded, who are interested on Turkey and Kurdish issues to come together and have a vehicle of organizing meetings and events and delegations to Turkey and Kurdish regions in the Middle East. So we got an APPG on British Kurds and Turks, launched last week, with about 33 members of Parliament and peers. Daniel Carden from Liverpool is chairing the group. And we have David Warburton, a Tory MP, as a vice chair, and several others. So it's a cross-party organisation, and it's just been launched. And we're hoping that the group will be quite active in Parliament in terms of raising issues in debates or organising debates of their own. But at the same time, the group would be hopefully organising delegations to visit Kurdistan quite often.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for that. Well, I know when my own MP, who we don't see as much as we would like to, because he's now got this big job in the Labour Party. But one of the things that we, as a constituency, always relished was when Jeremy had taken trips and would then report back at the GC about those trips. And then, you know, in Islington North, then stir us into action, whether, you know, Islington North, it's a demonstration, but also as well, making links with community groups. So I do hope that the MPs who are involved will take that back to their constituency and not keep it just at the House of Commons and their visits, because I think that's so important that they feed that back to their constituencies. And it'd be nice to know that there are some Northwest MPs in there. I don't know, because again, if we can get some dissemination, and if not, why not?
Is Graham Morris from Northwest? Durham?
No, Graham Morris is my friend from Easington. That's in Durham, yeah.
Yeah, he's on.
That's northeast, not northwest. Good old Graham. He supports Palestine too. He's wonderful.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. John, can you share your thoughts with us?
Sure.
Did you attend a recent trial?
Yes.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. It's been very interesting to listen to everybody and heartening as well, and then particularly interested to hear your observations.
Yes, thank you.
From the visit you made recently. And I've listened to what Julie was saying about the Arbika, or Ahmed as it's known in Kurdish, which is, and I apologise to those of you that know more about this than me, but just to give it just very quickly on this, is a city of 2 million people, and it's effectively the capital of the Kurdish region. So in a way it's like the London of the Kurdish region. And I was just listening to Julie, and I think I've actually been there now 4 times in the last 4 years, and so I've kind of seen that evolution or deterioration in the situation. From 2014 I briefly went there during the local elections, and I got on the election campaign bus, which had Gulten Kishinek and Virat Anli, who were just standing as the co-mayors, and they got elected, and the Kurdish party's vote went up, significantly in Diyarbakir. and all the other sort of Kurdish towns and sort of the independent Kurdish party as opposed to the other parties operating in the region. But what I was going to say was that there was, at that time, there was a real hope and a real pride in what was being achieved in terms of local democracy, because the Kurdish movement, one of its kind of real features is its commitment to grassroots democracy. Yes. And there was a lot of things that were being accomplished in terms of steps to involve the population more in discussions on the budget, things like initiatives like multilingual nurseries provision, things like a women's department and a conscious policy to clamp down on domestic violence. Initiatives, for example, like if a man was found to have been responsible for domestic violence, then the municipality would stop paying his wages and pay it to his wife or his partner instead. That kind of thing. And also there was a helpline set up for women, for people experiencing domestic violence. Other initiatives, like there was plans to build a city forest park, which they called would be along with the city. Very kind of innovative and exciting initiatives like that. A lot of cultural initiatives, like funding a theatre group which was doing performances of Shakespeare in Comanche for the first time. Comanche being the Kurdish language there, and many other initiatives. So there was a real hope. But the last time I went in 2017. The mayors were in jail, and I attended the trial, which I'll speak about in a minute, of Gultan Kishinev, which wasn't in Diyarbakir, but I'll say something about that in a minute. And I went briefly to Diyarbakir, and the person who drove me there asked me, he said, please, just stay out of sight. He said, because you'll be followed, and it's not so much what will happen to you, because maybe they'll detain you for a day or two and then throw you out of the country. But it's more what happened to the other people. So, I mean, I did manage to see some people when I was there. It was very discreet, and effectively I stayed in the hotel, and it was just so different to all the other previous trips. But we saw that steady deterioration. And Diyarbakir, a city of 2 million people, really grew, I think, in population from the 90s, when the villages were burned. Yeah. The army went through just destroying Kurdish villages, and refugees went into the city. And then, in the last couple of years, what's happened is that the military have destroyed the heart of the city, Sur, that's the old ancient, the old city of Diyarbakir, and turned many of the residents there, thousands of them, those that they haven't killed, into refugees in their own city. It's just, it's tragedy upon tragedy. But just on the trial of Gultan Kishinev, so that was held in Malatya, and I managed to get into it. I think I thought it very unusual to get into a trial. Partly because it was held in this, they picked a town that was well out of the way. The local police weren't completely on the job, and so I just sort of went in with the crowd. Though they were sort of taking details and everything a bit later. But what was striking was, so they picked a town that's, I think, 150 kilometres from Diyarbakir on the grounds of security, for security reasons. So they picked a town which there's no significant security issues, and yet they could not bring Gultan Kishinev actually to the trial. So she appeared at this 6th hearing of her trial, but only by video link, because she'd been held in a maximum security prison some 600 miles away. And she appeared alongside another leading female politician, woman politician, Sabahat Tunsul, who's not a mayor, but another ex-MP. They're both former members of Parliament. And Sabahat, really a distinguished politician. When she was arrested, there's quite iconic photos of 6 police officers dragging her to the van, clamping literally a gloved hand clamped across her mouth to stop her from speaking as they took her off to prison. But they both appeared, and they were smiling. It was quite stirring to see, people were delighted to be able to actually even just exchange messages, brief messages, like Gultan's daughter was there, for example, and they could very briefly talk to each other, but just across a video link. That was the only way in which they could communicate. And Gultan made the point, said, I've not been able to make a proper defence. I need to appear in person to put my case. The prosecution is seeking 230 years prison sentence jail sentence for Gultan Kishinev. 41 charges. Most of them relate to speeches that she's made or alleged to have made at various times. In her defence, she argued, well, where's the evidence for this? Because various hearings, they've said, well, we have this evidence, we have CDs, we have tapes, but they've never been able to actually produce them. And at this 6th hearing, they still didn't have the evidence. And you had the situation where the judge said to the defence, well, can you put some more pressure on the authorities in Diyarbakir to get this evidence to the next hearing of the trial? A kind of farcical situation. Apparently, part of the story behind that is that the people that concocted this evidence were linked to the Gultan faction. So some of them have now been put into jail. And as the Gulen faction, rather than the Gultan faction, the Gulenist faction. So some of the people that assembled the case against Gultan Kushner are now being jailed themselves for their alleged involvement in the alleged coup attempt. And as she said in the court, well, you don't trust these people, yet you're using their evidence to try and put me into jail for 230 years. One of the, I won't speak for much longer, but one of the striking things was that some of the charges relate to speeches that she made outside the Diyarbakir prison when she was co-mayor, because there was events held on the anniversary of the 1980 military coup, and she'd go along and make a speech, and basically they were calling for the prison to be closed down and turned into a museum. Diyarbakir prison has this terrible reputation for behaviour similar to that of the Nazis in terms of torture and so on. And so she's facing these charges in relation to speeches she made outside that prison in recent years when she was a co-mayor. And the irony of that is that in her early 20s she was inside that prison being tortured. She still has, she still has the signs of the torture. And at one point she was locked in a cell with the prison boss's Alsatian dog. And that's the kind of conditions that she was treated. I think they said, who's the ringleader in one particular instance? She put her hand up and they dragged her off and locked her up with the dog, and she put up with that for some period of time. And now she's facing charges for calling for that prison to be shut down. So that just shows you the kind of the nature of the situation. But when I went to Diyarbakir, I spoke briefly with the deputy mayor, Mrs. Bukak. And she was explaining, I just met her in a flat really with her family, and she said, well, I can't do anything, I'm elected councillor still, but we're just not allowed to meet. The town has been run by this appointed commissioner who has sacked thousands of employees, thousands of teachers have been sacked, some of them have been forced to relocate, the women's department's been shut down, all the various things we were trying to do. So, and we really, I said, what can we do? So we really want people to take up this campaign of mayors supporting mayors. And to my mind, Sadiq Khan, is there any reason why he can't take up the case of Gultan Kushner? I'm not just singling him out, but he's the mayor of the biggest, or mayors in Manchester as well, people like Paul Dennett. And is there any reason why they can't take up the case of the other mayors? There's more than 90 mayors, isn't there, in prison. At the very least, just take it up as a human rights issue. These are elected mayors. Why are they in prison on these fraudulent charges? I mean, Gultan Kushner is accused of being a director of an armed organisation. On the grounds, I think the main grounds for that is that she was observed going into the offices of the DTK, I think it's the Democratic Society Congress.
I've been in there.
Yeah, which was a grassroots campaigning organisation. And at that time, there was a peace process underway in Turkey. That very organisation had been invited by the Turkish Parliament to make its own submissions on, to talk about a new constitution. But now that's used as grounds for her being so-called director of an armed organisation. So just on very basic, democracy and human rights grounds, I think, the mayors really, as many as possible should they just say something, make a statement, write to the commissioners, ask what's going on, ask for the right to attend the trials of these people. They'll probably get turned down, but still, take up their case. It would be valuable. And I think the idea of this network is really good, and I think it will help what we've been trying to do up north. Because maybe with a network it could be like a web page, and then we could point, you know, a few people could put their experience and stories, like, you know, your experience, and we can use that to say, well, there is this is what's happening, can you just link up with this, please? And on the twinning, I think it's possible, because there are, you know, I look in Haringey is twinned with six towns. I just looked it up on Google, actually. Some in Germany. So why can't it twin with Diyarbakir, for example? There's a big Kurdish population in Haringey.
It's interesting, isn't it?
It's just a thought. I know it's not going to be formal because of the situation in that town, but the fact that you twin with it then raises the question, well, we want to talk to the mayor. Why can't we talk? Why is the mayor in prison? Why is the council not meeting? What's happened? You know, all those kind of issues tie up with it. So, and it's something we'll look at what we can do up north as well. So I think it's, you know, this idea for a network and is really good, because it can help to sort of galvanise us all, and we can share the experiences and get some results and some solidarity with these people. They deserve it. They set an example for the rest of us as well, in terms of their dedication, to fight for democracy and for equality. And we should support them at this time.
No, thank you very much, John. Thank you. And the point you made about the network, it's exactly what Councillor Ali Gould, Ulmish, myself and others were thinking. To be advised, of course, what's the way forward, and to explore ways of engaging mayors. I found from 18 years of experience with mayors, you can get very little out of them if you take a full frontal approach. I have been successful in getting stuff out of them, but it takes a while. So if we don't have the network, if we don't have the thinking about how we can, then I don't think we're ever going to do it, because asking them to do it is just never going to happen, So I'm with you there, and I think we just have to get some smart thinking and links together. See, I mean, I'm immediately thinking, Umesh reminded us that our current Mayor of London was previously the Director of Liberty. Well, you don't lose all of that. Well, maybe you can do. I won't say any more. It's just work in progress. Work in progress. And I think what we've got to do is just network and some smart thinking, and we've got it as a goal. And it's a goal that we're working towards, and we can get there. Before I bring in Margaret, Estella, in terms of, you've given us the information and we've heard it, the information exemplified from speakers from their personal visits, and thank you for that. That's in a sheet that's available, all that the speakers have observed and witnessed is in a sheet. But Estelle, can you come in now and tell us, we're at 7:30. It'd be good if we could finish at about 8:15.
Yeah, if I could just make a few remarks now.
Yes. And then Margaret, you can come in.
We can
and then
discuss.
We can then just go around and anybody who then have to make comments.
I mean, my first point is, really, when we call it solidarity with jailed Kurdish mayors and councillors, and defend local democracy in Turkey. Now, the reason for this is very important. Julie spoke about it, and John already in detail, more in detail, because we have here in Turkey, with the HDP, the local councillors and the local mayors were the ones who were the grassroots organization building the democratic society in Turkey. And that is a specific Kurdish project which is based on the ideas of building a pluralist multicultural, ethnic, equal society in Turkey, represented through the HDP. So when we are, so the important point really is not just to see this amazing project being attacked and undermined in every possible way, and with it, actually, you know, the war on the Kurds increasing in all areas. But it is also an indication of the crisis, if we are looking, you were indicating it could happen to us. But in fact, people are facing a crisis here in Britain. People are facing a crisis in Europe on the local level. If we are talking about the strikes, you know, that are from local authorities, the trade unions, the national health workers and so on. And where we are looking at this situation in the crisis is actually almost to come together and to fight on the fronts, both locally and over there, in anticipation of the political crisis that will be worse here at some point. So the political situation to make the links on the level of local communities, and not just on the level of MPs and Labour Party, but on levels like yourself being faced with the local community in Hackney or in Harrogate or in Islington or wherever, yeah? And to make these links on the ground. I cannot emphasize this enough, because so far the campaigns were focused on the HDP as a party, a political party. Nobody or very few people know about this, what the party stands. Many local MPs that I speak to, they still think it's just an opposition party. But what the party stands for in terms of being a democratic organization, these discussions could take place on that local level. That's why I'm extremely keen on this campaign to stress, defend local democracy, solidarity with mayors and councillors and the HDP. Of course the whole party. But as I said, until you came along and you made all these kind of revelations, we were only sending people to trials. You see? So the thing is, we will continue with the trials, of course. There's many mayors and others in prison. But the importance is to stress the HDP as a project, and not just to go to the trial of a Devirtas and Figen Yükselen. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. To bring the awareness of the actual importance of that party within Turkey. If this gets destroyed, you know, I mean, with it, the project of building democracy in Turkey, real democracy from below. And that is my worry, because so far we have only had a solidarity campaign that stressed the HDP. Yeah, so what? You know, I mean, we have to be more concrete with the projects we have, and we make, and that's why I'm so happy that Jeanette is doing that, and some local councillors were at the last delegation, to bring this into the campaign, and to create these local links. And I think then we will also get the mayors. You know, you say about the difficulties. But I do think it might be possible, the London mayor, to put enough pressure, you know, through the networking that we do have, you know, to come to an event, to speak out on this level. Because after all, you know, not just because of the Mindas, but precisely because of the struggle of the people in the local ground, in Diyarbakir, the women, they, you know, we never mention that, normally, okay? And to bring it to the attention how many of these women are involved in these struggles. Yeah. And I think through you and through the local networking, we can expand the discussion on what's really going on there, and, you know, and so on. So, I mean, and especially as we haven't at the moment the facility to raise on any, how shall I say, on any European level. We were rejected in terms of, you know, governments taking action. So maybe through the local push and through the upcoming permanent People's Tribunal in Paris next month in March, where I will plead for you to support this permanent People's Tribunal on the Kurds, to bring these kind of things to the attention of the broader public through, you know, open sessions with grassroots, witnesses, campaigners, MPs, etc., etc. So we have the opportunity then to raise it on a wider level, to mobilize people, in fact, you know, and not just to wait for parliaments and for, you know, for the government to make an announcement which they will never do on Turkey, you know. So to push it on that front, and I think this is a really excellent idea to do this with the local councils, and I can't thank you enough because I've been involved for so many years. And I think that that can help to push the political issues and involve local people from England, you know, who are on strike or whatever, from trade unions and other layers of people. So I think it's really a very important campaign that we have a committee that we push this issue on local democracy, democracy in Turkey, democracy in Europe, real democracy.
Yeah.
So I think that's the important point here. Okay, so thank you very much, you know, and concrete things we can discuss as long as we have this committee network. Some ideas have already come up that John said, to set up a website, you know, to get other, you know, councillors involved and, you know, to meet up and discuss what we can do sort of immediately.
Yeah. I mean, just responding here now, the commitment is real, and I said to Ibrahim earlier, we know, because I've been working with Ibrahim now so many years, one of our campaigns, you remember, was to get Kurdish councillors elected to our own councils. And it took us many years to do that. You know, working on many fronts. You know, because it doesn't happen without planning. It doesn't happen without, you know, Halkavi and activists and bringing people into Halkavi, you will know, Estella, to explain to them, because they thought in Hackney at one time that every Kurd was a member of the PKK and, you know, had no understanding of the differences. All of that they had to learn. And the elected politicians had to learn that. And then we knew that also they would not change unless they understood a threat to their vote. And the threat to their vote would be when Kurdish councillors came forward and said, I'm standing here because I can bring my vote out. That's the truth, you know. And when they saw that now, they started to understand about the issues that were affecting the people that they represented, that they were put into the side. And we had this campaign through Halkavi for about 15 years. And at one time, I think Hackney had about three councillors of Kurdish origin. And so we know that it takes, what it takes, we know what it takes to plan. And we know, Councillor Ali Gould knows as well, we know what time it takes, we know how to nuance, and we know how to bring people together. So this is just the start tonight, and we will be reaching out. And the question that you can advise us on, I'm always about achieving and then moving on, so that's why I started by talking about London. But I'm taking Julie's point, and so if we should be talking national, but finding the because it's doable national, because if we reach out firstly to councillors and get councillors of Turkish and Kurdish origin nationally, we were being followed, and it was all, you know, it's awful. Absolutely. Thank you. John,
Just
and then Margaret.
Just on a practical thing, so ideas coming up. I mean, one thing is we have the HDP head of PAT in Brussels have provided us with an up-to-date list, haven't they, of all the mayors that are in prison as of the middle of. So we can use that when we to get different groups of, well, ideally mayors, but also groups of councillors to take up their cases in details what prison they've been held in, and also the names of the commissioners for the who've been appointed in place. You know, again, it may be a bit pointless, but they could be contacted to, you know, to put pressure on them. Just one other thing that struck me, it may not be practical, it may be, because obviously delegations, there's a difficulty in organising them into Turkey at the moment. But maybe using things like Skype, it would be possible to get representatives who aren't in jail. Like, for example, an ideal scenario, London Assembly has a discussion on it, and it beams in somebody, like, for example, the Deputy Mayor of Diyarbakir, who's not in, I think she's been able to go to Europe sometimes, and she can speak from occupied Diyarbakir, in effect, you know, that kind of thing. That might be a way of helping to, and make the links clear as a bit more tangible. Just what and linking up with some of the, there are some, there's kind of, underground is a bit too strong a term, but there are initiatives to keep the struggle alive. The Kurdish movement always regenerates all the time. The other people, there's very resilient. So there are, you know, cultural initiatives in relation to multilingual education and theatre and things like that. There may be some connections that can be put together at that level as well. You know, it should be.
We could certainly we could certainly put together a conference. When Ken was here as mayor in the first year, 2004, we had a wild time, didn't we? In fact, one time we were banned as far as Turkish TV was concerned. Which isn't difficult to do really, because as a mayor, Ken stood with us at these events and spoke out. Myself and Ken and others, we had meetings about that here. There's no reason why we can't think of doing a conference or something like that. And I was saying to Estella, we can arrange for Skyping, you know, within our buildings and stuff like that. So I think it's just about, again, looking post the local elections and doing some really smart thinking, and then coming up with something, you know, for maybe doing something in September or October, doing some work, some groundwork. We'll be doing something, no problems with that.
I think very important to keep the contact with the local HDPs.
Yes, and it's the local.
You know, we have also, of course, in Brussels, in Ankara, etc., offices, and maybe they could have one person to communicate at the moment that there is somebody in Brussels who will provide material. Ibrahim has also got contacts, of course, you know. So I think to keep that alive under all conditions would be very important, you know. So directly with the HDP and with, you know, these councillors on the ground, maybe to identify some of them who can still work, you know, and, you know, have this life relationship. You know, I think this is the rule. We are not talking just about solidarity. Please, there's a plea from me, not to think in terms of old solidarity action just, you know, what can we do, but to do something together.
To reach out, yeah. No,
To reach out to be, you know, something, maybe it would be even something, you know, in Haringey or wherever, where we could ask somebody to come over and give you support. You know, same thing with the local community, with the local KCC. There should be relations on the ground with the local communities to build that. Unfortunately, hardly anybody's here from the local community, except Zainab. Okay? So this is unfortunately the case.
I mean,
So, you understand.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier. It's an unfortunate night for
but I have to say
councillors.
that I find it very sad because, you know.
Zainab, did you want to say anything?
No, I'm sort of waiting until the end. When you said we will talk about action, because much of what Julie said is, and also what John said, is extremely impactful to hear for people who don't know about those things. Most of us here know about it, but I guess we're going to talk about how to reach out to others rather than preaching to the converted.
Oh, well, we're hopefully going to do
so
that.
I will just speak then.
Okay, thank you, Zainab.
Can I just ask very quickly, given something that you mentioned, how different would you say Sadiq Khan is to, say, Ken Livingstone in terms of the type of support, the readiness to receive political support from the mayor?
Oh, I mean, I've worked with 3 mayors, and they're all, the 3 of them are completely different. You don't have to guess about where Ken is coming from. The history tells you that. Sadiq is from a different place. Sadiq has a clear agenda based on the strategies that he wants to introduce to bring about, if you like, a much fairer London. And he doesn't speak unless he speaks about his background and his father as a bus driver being one of how many children. That's what his London, he's using his London story about London politics for Londoners. And that's his first term goal. And you can't fault that, because that's his manifesto. When I was talking about how, for somebody like me, who's, if you like, I suppose, a political strategist, is there are points in the time of political process where you then can meet these individuals and put the case, because it's about the vote, right? And then you can then have a conversation about whether or not they're willing to speak up about, you know, persecutions that are being experienced by the families of Londoners, say. Do you see what I mean? So that's what we've got to be looking at, to see when is the time appropriate to bring these messages to politicians so that they can understand how they can act and respond. And if you looked at trying to respond to, say, the second mayor that we had, it was interesting. He regularly spoke about being a Turk himself. One of the conversations we had when we went to the British Embassy was, you know, because of his position in government, how does he respond to the briefings that you're giving him? And basically, we were told that they were being diplomatic. They just keep saying, we will keep briefing him, because it meant that nothing was happening. So if you want to engage in a political process, what I'm saying is you have to find out when it's appropriate, when you've got your case, when you've done the work. And that's why I said you don't, it's a waste of space to just write a letter demanding action, because that's just never going to deliver. What we have to do is build up the case and build up momentum with support.
But sometimes you're pushing against an open door and sometimes you're not. Right?
That's maybe the case. You would find that out. You would find that out in your planning.